The cup rattled against the metal tray. Harold Whitaker's hands shook so hard the water nearly spilled before it reached his lips. His fingers, thin, bruised from missed IV insertions, couldn't grip anymore. The tremor wasn't new. It had been building for 3 days. 3 days since anyone helped him drink. The nurse walked past room 214 without slowing. Her shoes squeaked against the linoleum, fading into the noise of carts and monitors and voices that never stopped for him. Harold's throat burned. His lips cracked. The call button dangled 6 inches from his bed, swaying slightly from where he'd knocked it earlier. No one came. Ridgeway Memorial Hospital smelled like bleach and something underneath it, something rotting that no amount of cleaning could reach. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a gray haze. Harold's room sat at the end of the east wing, past the supply closet, past the rooms with flowers and visitors and laughter. Room 214 was where people went to be forgotten, but Naomi Calder never forgot anything. She sat in the hallway outside, knees pulled to her chest, math homework balanced on a binder. Her mother pushed a cleaning cart 3 doors down, humming low under her breath. Naomi had learned to be invisible here, 12 years old and already fluent in the language of not being seen. Still, if you liked what you're hearing so far, hit that like button and subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next. She glanced up. Through the half-open door of room 214, she saw him. The old man was staring at the cup like it was a mountain he'd never climb. His chest heaved, once, twice. Then he started coughing, wet, desperate, drowning. And this time, it didn't stop. What would you do if you saw someone suffering and everyone else just walked by? Naomi's pencil froze mid-equation. The coughing tore through the quiet hallway like something alive. She looked toward her mother, but Keisha Calder was already turning the corner with the cleaning cart, earbuds in, unaware. The nurses at the station didn't even look up. Naomi stood. Her sneakers made no sound as she moved toward room 214. The door was cracked just enough to see inside. The old man bent forward, one hand clutching his chest, the other clawing at the bedsheet. His face had gone red, then purple. She shouldn't go in. Her mother's rules were clear. Don't touch anything. Don't talk to patients. Don't make trouble. Naomi had spent 2 years perfecting the art of being a shadow in this place. Invisible meant safe, but the coughing wouldn't stop. A nurse in blue scrubs walked past Naomi without breaking stride. She held a clipboard. She was texting. She didn't even glance at room 214. Naomi's stomach twisted. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The old man's eyes snapped to hers, wide, wet, startled, like he hadn't seen another human being in weeks. Maybe he hadn't. Naomi crossed to the tray, lifted the plastic cup with both hands and brought it to his lips. He drank. Slowly, desperately. When the coughing finally eased, he slumped back against the pillow, gasping. His gaze never left her face. "Thank you," he whispered. Naomi nodded. She set the cup down, hands trembling now too. Harold Whitaker stared at her like she'd just pulled him back from the edge of something dark and final. But it wasn't gratitude in his eyes, it was shock, like he'd seen a ghost. The next afternoon, Naomi came back, and the day after that. Why did Harold look at her like that, like he knew her from somewhere else? By the end of the first week, Naomi knew Harold's routine better than the staff did. Medication, 9 a.m., 2 p.m., 8 p.m., except it was never on time. Sometimes an hour late, sometimes skipped entirely with a note that read, "Patient sleeping." Harold was never sleeping. He just stopped asking. Meals delivered at 11:30 a.m. and 5 p.m., left on the tray whether he could reach them or not. Naomi started cutting his food into smaller pieces, angling the fork so his shaking hands could manage. She learned to prop the cup at just the right height. He never asked her to come back, but every day at 3:30 p.m., when her mother started cleaning the West Wing, Naomi slipped into room 214. Harold talked sometimes. Mostly he didn't, but Naomi noticed things. The way he sat, back straight even when it clearly hurt. The way he folded his napkin into precise squares. The way he said, "Yes, ma'am," and "No, ma'am," to nurses half his age who barely acknowledged him. Military, she thought. He'd been military. One afternoon, she asked him, "Were you in the army?" Harold's jaw tightened. He looked toward the window. "Long time ago." "Did you like it?" He was quiet for a long time. "I believed in it." Naomi didn't push. She just sat beside him and read the local newspaper aloud. Births, deaths, high school football scores. Harold closed his eyes and listened like every word mattered. But other things were happening too. Things Naomi didn't understand yet. She'd started noticing the way certain patients got faster responses when they pressed the call button. The way room 214's light stayed red longer than the others. The way a man in a gray suit, Clifford Rains, according to his name badge, always frowned when he walked past Harold's door. One afternoon, Naomi overheard two nurses talking near the supply closet. "Room 219's still here." Rains flagged him, non-priority. "What's that mean?" "Means he's not worth the bed." Naomi's hands curled into fists. That night, she saw Rains marking something on a clipboard outside Harold's room. What was he writing? And why did it feel like a countdown? Naomi didn't mean to eavesdrop. She was sitting in her usual spot in the hallway, backpack open, pretending to study vocabulary words while her mother emptied trash bins 2 rooms down. But Clifford Rains was standing just around the corner, talking to someone on his phone. His voice was low, clipped, efficient. "Room 214 doesn't need another week. Non-insured, no family, no advocate. Transfer him to hospice if necessary. I need the bed freed by Friday." Naomi's pencil snapped in her hand. She didn't know what hospice meant exactly, but she understood tone. She understood freed. She understood the way Rains said him, like Harold wasn't a person, just a line item on a budget report. Her chest felt tight. Rains ended the call and walked past her without a glance. His shoes clicked sharp and final against the tile. Naomi waited until he turned the corner, then slipped into room 214. Harold was awake, staring at the ceiling. The afternoon light through the window made his skin look paper-thin, almost translucent. He didn't turn his head when she entered, but his fingers twitched slightly. A small acknowledgement. "Hey," Naomi said softly. "Hey yourself." She sat in the chair beside his bed. For a while, neither of them spoke. "Something wrong?" Harold asked finally. Naomi opened her mouth, then closed it. What could she say? That she'd overheard a man in a suit talk about him like he was trash? That she was 12 years old and had no power to stop anything? "No," she lied. "Just tired." Harold's eyes shifted toward her. He didn't believe her, but he didn't press. That night, the sky turned black and heavy. Rain began to fall, not gentle but violent, hammering the hospital windows like fists. Naomi's mother finished early and told her to pack up. But as they walked toward the elevator, Naomi glanced back. Harold's call light was on, flashing red in the dark hallway. No one was coming. And then, his monitor started beeping. Fast, erratic, wrong. Was this what Rains had been waiting for? Naomi ran. She didn't think, didn't ask permission. She just dropped her backpack and sprinted back down the hallway, her mother's voice calling after her in confusion. Room 204's door was half closed. The monitor beeped sharp and frantic. Inside, Harold was gasping. Short, shallow breaths that didn't seem to reach his lungs. His face had gone pale, slick with sweat. A nurse finally appeared, checked the monitor, adjusted something on the IV without looking at him. "Just a spike," she muttered. "He'll settle." Then she left. Naomi stood frozen in the doorway. Harold's eyes found hers. And for the first time since they'd met, she saw something new in them. Fear. "Hey," she whispered, moving to his bedside. "Hey, it's okay." But it wasn't okay. His hand reached out, shaking, desperate, and she took it. His grip was weak, but it held on like she was the only thing keeping him tethered. The storm outside intensified. Thunder rolled low and long. The lights flickered once. "Naomi," Harold said, his voice barely there. "I'm here. You remind me of someone." She squeezed his hand. "My little sister," he continued, eyes distant now. "Lost her young. She used to look at people the way you do, like she could see right through the walls they built." Naomi didn't know what to say. Harold's breathing evened out slightly, but his gaze stayed locked on the ceiling. "Can I tell you a secret?" She nodded. I wasn't always this. He spoke slowly, carefully, about deserts that burned your skin, jungles that swallowed sound, young men who followed his voice into chaos because they believed he'd bring them home. He never said the word captain or colonel, never mentioned medals, only responsibility. I failed someone once, he whispered, and I've been paying for it ever since. Naomi wanted to ask who, wanted to ask why. But before she could, Harold's eyes closed. And in the hallway outside, she heard footsteps. Raines's voice, cold and final. Transfer orders approved. Move him tomorrow morning. How could she stop this when no one would even listen to her? The orderlies arrived at 7:15 a.m. Two men in gray uniforms wheeling a transport gurney. They didn't knock, didn't announce themselves. Just walked into room 214 like Harold was already gone. Naomi stood in the doorway, backpack still on her shoulders. She'd come early, before school, before her mother's shift, because something in her gut told her to. Now she knew why. One orderly stripped the top sheet while the other checked the transfer papers clipped to a board. Harold sat upright in bed, silent, his hands gripping the rail. His knuckles were white. Wait, Naomi said. Neither man looked at her. We've got a schedule, the taller one muttered. He's not ready. Not our call, kid. Naomi's heart slammed against her ribs. She turned and ran. Down the hallway, past the nurse's station, straight to the administrative wing. Her sneakers squeaked against the polished floor. People stared. She didn't care. She found a nurse, then a shift supervisor, then someone in scrubs who looked important. Please, Naomi said, breathless. Room 214. They're moving him. He's scared. He's not ready. Please, the woman frowned. Honey, that's not something you... This doesn't concern you, a voice cut in. Clifford Raines stood in the hallway, arms crossed, expression carved from stone. He looked down at Naomi like she was an insect that had wandered into his building. He's not just a bed, Naomi said, voice shaking. He's a person. Raines stepped closer, knelt to her eye level. His smile was thin and cold. This is a hospital, he said slowly, not a charity. We help people who can be helped. Your friend in 214? He's had his time. Naomi's throat tightened. Raines stood, adjusted his tie, and turned toward the exit. Then, the double doors at the end of the hallway opened. Boots hit the floor in perfect rhythm. Who was coming? And why did the entire hallway go silent? 5 men entered in formation. Their uniforms were crisp, dark green, pressed to razor edges. Ribbons lined their chests in neat rows. Their boots struck the tile in unison, sharp, deliberate, impossible to ignore. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Phones lowered. Nurses froze. Even Raines turned, confusion flickering across his face. Behind them walked a man with silver hair beneath a peaked cap. His posture was steel. His presence filled the space like gravity. A U.S. Army general. He stopped in the center of the hallway and removed his cap slowly, tucking it under one arm. His eyes swept the room, clinical, assessing, missing nothing. Where is Harold Whitaker? He asked. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. No one answered. The general's gaze landed on Raines. You, administrator. Raines straightened, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Sir, I'm not sure there's been some kind of... Where is he? Raines hesitated. His mouth opened, closed. The general's jaw tightened. Room 214, Naomi said. Every head turned toward her. The general's eyes locked onto hers, sharp but not unkind. Thank you, he said. He moved toward room 214. The 5 officers followed in step. Raines tried to intercept, his voice climbing an octave. Sir, with all due respect, this is a private medical facility. There are protocols. The general stopped, turned. There is a mistake here, he said quietly, and it's yours. Raines's face drained of color. The general walked into room 214. Harold was still sitting upright, hands gripping the bedrail. The orderlies had backed into the corner. When the general entered, Harold's breath caught. He tried to sit straighter, failed. The general crossed the room, stopped at the foot of the bed, and stood at attention. Then he saluted. What had Harold done that made a general salute him? The room held its breath. Harold stared at the general like he was seeing a ghost. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His eyes filled, slow, disbelieving. "Sir," the general said, his voice tight with something that might have been emotion. "I finally found you." Harold's hands trembled. He shook his head weakly. "You shouldn't have come," he whispered. "Yes," the general replied. "I should have come sooner." Behind them, the hallway had filled with staff, nurses, doctors. Rains stood frozen just outside the door, his clipboard hanging limp in one hand. The general lowered his salute and stepped closer. He pulled a folded document from his uniform jacket and set it on the table beside Harold's bed. 32 years ago, the general said, you led an extraction mission in hostile territory. No air support, no backup, just you and a broken radio. You got 300 men out alive. Harold closed his eyes. The mission was classified. The credit went elsewhere. And when things went wrong after, when command needed someone to blame, they chose you. I made mistakes, Harold said quietly. You made decisions, the general corrected. The kind no one should have to make alone. And you carried the weight of it so the rest of us didn't have to. He straightened. I was one of those men, sir. Lieutenant Marcus Dre. I was 23 years old, and I would have died in that jungle if you hadn't pulled me out yourself. Harold's breath hitched. The general turned toward the door. His gaze landed on Rains like a hammer. This man will receive the highest level of care available. Immediately, I will personally oversee his treatment. Rains opened his mouth. Nothing came out. And you, the general continued, his voice dropping to something colder, will be under investigation by both federal health authorities and the Department of Defense. Neglect of a decorated service member is a crime. So is fraud, and I have a feeling we'll find both. Rains's face went gray. The general looked back at Harold. You're not forgotten, sir. Not anymore. What else had been hidden in Harold's file, and how many others had been erased like him? By the end of the week, everything changed. Ridgeway Memorial Hospital was under federal audit. Rains resigned within 48 hours, before formal charges were filed. The staff who'd ignored call buttons and skipped medication rounds were placed under review. Room 214 was moved to a private suite on the 4th floor. Harold's recovery was slow, but it was real. Physical therapy 3 times a week, proper medication schedules. A dietitian who actually asked what he liked to eat. And every afternoon, Naomi visited. She read him the newspaper, helped him with his exercises, sat beside him in comfortable silence. One morning the general returned. This time he brought a small wooden box. There's going to be a ceremony, he said. Not a big one, just enough to make things right. Harold's jaw tightened. I know you don't. But we do. 2 weeks later, Naomi stood beside Harold in a conference room at the Veterans Affairs office. A small group had gathered, officers, a few reporters, a representative from the Department of Defense. Harold was presented with a commendation medal. Long overdue, the citation was read aloud, mission details still classified, but the recognition clear. When it was over, the general knelt in front of Naomi. He held out a folded flag, pressed, crisp, impossibly heavy for something made of fabric. This is for you, he said quietly. Naomi's hands shook as she took it. You reminded the world who he was, the general told her, and who we're supposed to be. Harold placed a hand on her shoulder. His grip was stronger now. You gave me my name back, he said. Naomi looked up at him, tears streaking her face. I just helped you drink water. No, Harold said. You saw me. That's more than most people ever did. But how many others were still out there? Forgotten, erased, waiting. Naomi graduated high school 6 years later. She stood on the stage in her cap and gown, diploma in hand, scanning the crowd. Her mother was there, front row, beaming. Beside her sat Harold, older now, grayer, but steady. He raised his hand in a small salute. She smiled. After the ceremony, Harold handed her an envelope. What's this? Open it. Inside was a letter of recommendation, signed by General Marcus Dre, and an acceptance letter to a nursing program at a university 2 states over. Full scholarship. Naomi stared at the paper, throat tight. I didn't apply for this. We did, Harold said. On your behalf. Her mother squeezed her hand. You reminded us what care looks like, Harold continued. Now go teach others. Naomi hugged him, hard. He held on just as tight. But later that night, as she packed her things, she thought about room 214, about the other rooms in that hospital, about the other hospitals across the country where people sat in dim light, waiting for someone to notice they were still breathing. How many Harolds were out there? How many people had been flagged as non-priority and left to disappear? She didn't have the answers yet, but she would. Years later, Naomi Calder became the director of patient advocacy at one of the largest hospital networks in the country. She built programs, rewrote policies, trained staff to see people, not just charts. And every year on the anniversary of the day she first walked into room 214, she visited Harold. They drank coffee, read the paper, talked about the ones they'd saved and the ones they were still searching for. Because sometimes, the most powerful acts of justice begin with the smallest acts of kindness. What will you do the next time you see someone the world has forgotten?